This is Movies, a podcast about the act of cinema. And with me today is Hans, who has not gotten a new computer just yet. It seems that you are still using that, what was it, a 1997 Dell?
No, it's just like a Chromebook. It's not great. It's just very slow.
And it comes across, so you're always lagging a little bit. Have you warmed
Yeah.
up to it, though? Have you gotten used to it? Has it been nostalgic for you?
No, it's annoying. I was streaming with the Death Course boys the other day, and my lag was like 20 seconds. So that was really annoying when you're trying to have a conversation with someone. So I thought they
Yeah.
were just I thought they were just talking over me, and I was like, you and it was just a lag.
Oh, that is the worst situation imaginable. I mean, remember when we did that show on Twitch? That when we were still exploring with the idea of doing live shows, and this was not when we did the Twitch beta test when we were talking about Welcome to the Dollhouse, the Todd Solondz film. This is when we were talking about Possessor back in 2020, and Jack's internet was like way behind ours, so he would
Yeah.
get whatever joke you'd say 3 minutes after and just laugh. It would be like an MSNBC live on the ground interview
Yeah.
with a reporter. Fucking
In
suck.
Iraq, the war
Yes.
in Iraq.
Well, hey, speaking of Iraq, we have Detective Wolfman here on the show tonight. How are you doing tonight, Detective Wolfman?
I'm doing very well. How are you boys?
Doing fantastic, just dandy. Hans, how's your diabetes doing?
It's good. The thing that got me all fucked up is that I just got past COVID, but it fucked up with my taste and smell. So everything just tastes awful now. Like I was brushing
Well,
my
we,
teeth
we
earlier
always knew
today.
you had bad taste,
I
Hans.
thought I thought I was brushing my teeth with shit because it's like this is not minty. Like I don't feel minty fresh at all. It was just bitter and awful. So now I have that. It's just great for my diet, I guess, because I just don't want
Yeah,
to
I
eat
was going to
it.
say that coincides very well with your diabetes
Yeah.
diagnosis, right? So now you're not going to be as tempted to eat any sweet snacks. Hey, Wolfman, what is
No.
your favorite sweet snack?
Sweet snack. It's probably just like Reese's cups.
That's pretty good. That's a
At
good
least as
choice.
far as candy goes, anyway.
Yeah, I
Are
miss
you?
those.
Would you say you're a fan of frozen Reese's cup?
So I don't freeze them, but I do put them in the fridge. So I get them cold, but I don't get them. I don't get them so cold that they're gonna crack my teeth.
Right. That's a very wise decision. You
Hmm.
know, when I think about Reese's cups, I think of Jews being burnt in World War II.
Yeah.
Totally.
Everything
What?
reminds me of that.
Well, that was the section that made it to our latest clip on YouTube. Is you talking about how you tried to put in a prompt for Midjourney AI for Joe Biden? What was it, picking flowers at Auschwitz?
Auschwitz, yeah.
That's great. Hey, we're talking about The Keep tonight. We're talking about Michael Mann's The Keep, and we're going to delve a little bit into its source material, The Keep by F. Paul Wilson, who's a novelist. He's a kind of a genre novelist. He really loves doing these vampire horror books. And we have talked about The Keep on this show before when we were doing the Michael Mann retrospective with Kid Polaroid. And then I isolated that and I put that out by itself maybe about a year or two after, just because I had gotten back into the movie. I found a merchant online who had been selling 1080p copies of the film. I'm very curious, Wolfman, how you wound up watching this movie because it's legally anyway, it's not really available anywhere aside from Australia, and even that's a more recent thing. They have not taken any great efforts in restoring this movie or trying to ensure that it never goes out of print. And I think that's entirely because of Michael Mann's opinion on this film. He's not a fan of what was put out to theaters. So, just to kick things off, Wolfman, how did you go about watching The Keep for this program?
Well, I have a buddy of mine who's very computer savvy, as I am not, and he's got like this weird channel on Plex. Plex is like one of these free streaming apps you can download on a Roku TV,
Yeah.
and you can watch a lot of crap with apps or with ads. But he figured out a way to where he can basically he has his own channel that he like sent me a link to, and he just uploads shit to it, and he can find anything. So anytime I needed to watch anything, either for Drunk on Movies, rest in peace, or just for my own curiosity, I'll send him a text, and usually, like within the hour, he's got the movie uploaded to the thing.
So that's how you went about it. Was it a good
Yeah,
copy of the movie? Was it actually clear, or did this look like a VHS rip?
it looked like a VHS rip. It did
Ooh,
not look good at all.
okay.
Yeah.
So I also recently downloaded a Laserdisc rip
Mhm.
of The Keep. So I've been checking that out just to see how it looks because I've never not seen it pristine, and I actually have on one of my hard drives. And Hans, maybe you sent me like a link or something to it long after the fact. I have a 35 millimeter copy of the print, and it is really something to watch in all these different formats because it's such a visually strange and interesting and compelling film. So it looked like a VHS copy you got your hands on. Is that like the only means you've ever seen this film before? Because correct me if I'm wrong. You know, I've seen you chime in about The Keep a few times before on
Mhm.
Twitter.
Yeah, so I'd seen it before a few years ago. I was pretty new to it. Um, I'd always been a fan of, like, Michael Mann's hits, Heat, Collateral, that sort of thing. Um, and I remember, I don't remember how I heard about it, but I wound up watching it a few years ago, and at the time they had it on Prime. And it was a good, like, it was a good version. Um, and it's strange because, I mean, I remember it being a very odd, very flawed film when I watched it, but I remembered still kind of digging it overall. But after listening to the book on tape and watching it again, uh, it made it made the problems even more glaring.
Mm-hmm.
It made it feel more. Watching it the second time, it felt like they shot an outline and not a script, among other things.
What did you think of the tone difference between the film and the book? Because how I read the book anyway, it felt very Dracula. It felt very Bram Stoker's Dracula to me
Yeah,
compared to what we wound up getting, which is not that at all.
no.
It kind of feels like what I watched recently is the Golem, the
Hmm.
silent film from I think it was like 1918 maybe.
Hmm.
And it feels more in line with something like that, a big monster movie, full of
Monkeys. Monkeys got
yeah, sure. It doesn't really capture that essence that F. Paul Wilson puts into his book, but
Hmm.
I wanted to get your take on that as well.
Well, it's interesting because I think a big part of that is because in the book they spend so much time making you think that the monster is a vampire,
Mm-hmm.
that Molasar is basically Dracula. And then it's only spoilers, anyone listening, it's only revealed in like the final act that he's something more, and he's just using that to get Kuza to work with him.
Mm-hmm.
In the film, I don't even think they say the word vampire. And in the movie, he doesn't like rip their throats out. They don't have bloody deaths. He like burns them with energy. It's
Yeah.
very clear from the beginning that he's just some sort of like odd being out of time. Um, with no real like rules or myth around him.
Yeah, he feels much more like. And I like Molasar in this movie. I'm quite a fan of the design and everything. But there's
Yeah, I
points where
wanted more of him.
yes, yeah, absolutely. For me, it feels like at points he's almost like a Power Rangers villain.
Yeah.
The way he goes up against them. But yeah, you don't have those same components that are found within the novel. And the novel is apparently part of a series, which I wasn't aware of until someone commented on it on Patreon when I mentioned we were going to be covering The Keep. So apparently there's multiple novels in this series, none of which have been adapted to film. The Keep did have a graphic novel adaptation somewhat recently because it's become a little more fashionable to take
Okay.
a second look at this film. But I haven't checked that out. I haven't taken a look at that. Hans, you were going to input something.
Yeah. Did you think that the what's it? Molasar, is that the name?
Yeah.
It's like a proto Vecna from Stranger Things.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Maybe since you watched Stranger Things 4 recently, it kind of seems that way.
Yeah.
There's a similar design there, but it's all like Skeletor-ish.
Mhm.
You know?
And I love the Mortal Kombat 1 Raiden electricity rays that he was throwing. That
Yeah.
was very enjoyable for me. Were you guys able to? I wasn't able to finish the audiobook. I made it to hour 7 and I got lost at like hour 4. So I was just no idea what was going on for like the last 2 hours. I got to a point where it was a lot of just, how can I, Jewish talk from the voice that the guy was making. I'm assuming he was being the what's his name?
Ian McKellen.
Yeah, Ian McKellen character, where he's just talking about how, I don't know why they're doing this to us. We're good people, like that type of shit to his daughter, I think it was,
Mhm.
for like an hour. That's when it lost me, when I was just like, I don't even know where I'm listening to anymore, because it focused a lot on that. And the movies, it already starts with them going to Romania to the keep right away. With the book, something that I noticed right at the beginning was that it takes a while for them to even get there, because at the beginning they're trying to figure out why they're going there, and who they're sending, which soldiers, and all of that. When the movie's just immediately straight, no explanations, just, we're gonna get there and send the army there, I guess. Well, the Nazi army.
Yeah, the book is just able, I mean, obviously just because of the art form, the book is able just to build so much more. Like the fact that, the first like the whole first act of the book is just these German soldiers getting killed night after night, and it's building up the dread of this horror plot. In the movie, they arrive, and then like the next scene is the SS showing up, and Jurgen Prochnow being like, something's killing my men. Like like they let it out. He kills like 2 guys, and then they skip everything else, and they get right into like 100 pages into the book in like the first 20 minutes.
What do you guys make of the cast that is assembled for this film, The Keep? Because it's pretty stacked, especially for an 80s horror movie. And considering this was Michael Mann's second feature film, I don't know what the general reception or box office to Heat was at the time. Obviously, it has kind of crystallized into this 1980s gem that I'm not certain was as universally adored back then. But you've got Scott Glenn. You've got Jurgen Prochnow, who's kind of like, he's always great, but he's kind of like the poor man's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's got that look to him. Like, if you can't afford him and you're doing a Sci-Fi Channel movie, you can probably get that guy. You got Gabriel Byrne, who I think probably gives the best performance of the movie, although I don't know if much is required of him. He just has to be kind of menacing as the SS soldier. And Ian McKellen, of course.
Yeah. It's crazy. And the thing that the cast lends itself to is just how much of a missed opportunity the movie is in a lot of ways, because like from the jump, just the concept of it is really ballsy.
Mm-hmm.
You're making this like period piece horror movie, and you're throwing in, like, at the time, a very modern Tangerine Dream soundtrack, and yet your lead is an officer in the German army in World War II, not a Nazi party member, but close enough. He's adjacent. That's asking a lot of American audiences even back then, I think. And yeah, he's played by Jurgen Prochnow, who even back then I don't think was like a leading man.
No, was Das Boot before this, or maybe that was after? That was Wolfgang Petersen's. Was it like a TV movie they released to theaters? They would do that pretty frequently, where there would be like a 6-hour or 4-hour TV movie, and they would chop it up into 2 hours and put it in theaters. They did the same with Salem's Lot, and I feel like another big TV movie like moment from the late 70s, something like that, also got the theatrical treatment. Not Roots, because that would be
that's 81. That's
81. Okay, so it was right before this.
Well, and a choice that I really dug in the movie is casting Scott Glenn as Glacon, because Glacon is supposed to be this, immortal, very old entity, like this old figure from the first age, very much the type of character that you would cast a European for, or an Englishman, to lend that kind of timeless gravitas to. And I thought it was very ballsy to cast like a cowboy, like
Yeah.
cast an American in that role. And Scott Glenn always looks great. He's got that raw boned, just like real, like tough, like hardened look.
Were you guys
I thought
confused about? Oh, go ahead, Hans.
Yeah, I thought it was Lance Henriksen for like 90% of the movie until I looked it up and I was like, oh, all right, it's another kind of wormy white guy then. It's not the Millennium guy that I thought it was.
I was going to
Yeah,
chime in. Were you guys confused about what purpose he served in this movie before reading the book? Because he just kind of shows up out of there's very little explanation with his character or what he is intended to service the plot through, as aside from being an antagonist to this Molasar character. It's not really, it really feels a lot like what you said before, Wolfman. Like they had a outline to go off of, and we're just trying to jam all of these components together, and weren't too concerned about the functionality of how that would come together, or just whether or not that would be something that would appear as a linear film.
Well, and I read online, and this could all be bullshit, but I read that like there was a much longer, much more complete version of the film, and that was the one that Michael Mann turned in, but it was like 2.5 hours long, and the studio gutted the damn thing, and that's a big part of why it's such a so incoherent.
Yeah, there was a 210-minute copy of the film. Now, this has been spoken to death as he had his 3-hour version or whatever. I'm not unconvinced that was a work print and someone misunderstood, and that's just been an urban myth ever since. But
yeah,
I don't know. I can't imagine what that 3-hour version would look like. Now, I know with subsequent TV broadcasts of this movie, there have been bits and pieces of it that have been featured in that, because obviously they got to extend for time to meet a certain number of ads per showing or whatever. But that's not what was featured in any of the copies that went to streaming, which, the Amazon Prime version that you cited, and then the one that I bought, which was a 1080p copy. I'm pretty sure that's close to whatever the theatrical version of the film was. But apparently the ending is quite different depending on which version of the movie you wind up seeing. I would be really interested to see if that footage even still exists at this point. I do think at some point, maybe Michael Mann has to die first. Someone's gonna, somebody like Arrow will take this movie and they'll get a hold of all that footage, and they're gonna put out a very comprehensive Blu-ray that maybe 50 people will buy. But I think this is also just a weird pick for him to be helming, considering the rest of his filmography.
Definitely.
It clearly sticks out. There's nothing fantasy or really, aside from Manhunter, there's nothing particularly horror related to any of the work that he's done over the years. But this seemed to have stuck out to him. He wanted to tackle some sort of big fantasy epic, I guess, as his second feature.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. When I watched it again, I couldn't help but kind of keep drawing parallels to the Highlander in my mind, which came out 3 years later, and thinking of if the Highlander director had been given this movie, how different it could have been. Russell Mulcahy, because I could definitely see like a cheesier but possibly more popular version of this film, where Christopher Lambert is Glacon, and friggin' what's his name? The guy who played the Kurgan, Clancy Brown, is Molasar. Yeah, you could almost copy and paste the cast of that movie and put them in this.
That could be great. I can perfectly envision that. I just watched Highlander for the first time a couple of weeks ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And I was surprised at just how much I enjoyed. That was something I always avoided when I was a kid because I would see the Highlander TV show on USA, and I'd be like, "Nah, fuck this. I'm not watching this piece of shit."
Yeah, that show looked like garbage.
Yeah, so it always put me off to the movies. And I have no intention of watching Highlander 2 or
Don't.
any of those made-for-TV spin-off films that they did using the television cast and Christopher Lambert.
Yeah.
Doesn't interest me. But that first Highlander movie I thought was terrific. And, you know, something like that could be used as just by itself. Even if you remove the sequels and everything else, you could use the template of that film as just something to franchise. You know,
I can't believe it hadn't been remade yet.
I think that'll happen any day now. Probably with I don't know, Jonathan Majors, who they cast as like every character now.
Yeah,
Hans,
well-
who's going to be the Highlander?
I don't know, but it's going to be directed by Taka Waititi.
Taka Waititi's
Yeah.
Highlander.
Yeah.
It's gonna be
fun.
Eddie Redmayne.
God,
Yeah, someone very skinny, just CGI muscles.
Yeah. Something
That'll be
fucking
terrific.
terrible. And they'll get Jason Momoa to be the Kurgan.
Well, they're remaking Masters of the Universe, aren't they?
Are they?
Oh no,
Like into a live
it's
action thing?
It's Dungeons and Dragons is the one. I got
Dungeons
that
and
confused.
yeah, no,
Oh,
Masters of the Universe. That got a Kevin Smith revival series, didn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That
I think
was-
they did I think they did like a cartoon, like a new animated series on Netflix or something.
What I heard about that, and this could be wrong, is that that was critically panned because they killed off He-Man or whatever in like the first 10 minutes, and it was just focused
Yeah.
on some girl. Which
Oh
is
God,
the move for everything.
that's so stupid.
I can't wait till
Yeah.
we reboot this podcast and me and Hans die after 3 episodes, and it's just 2 female hosts.
Yeah,
That'll be
Just
good.
2 women.
it's just
Yeah.
Red
Women's-
Scare.
Yeah, that'll be
Yeah.
the way to go. That'll be the next season of movies. You know, speaking of franchising, you know, The Keep did have a board game. It did have a role playing game as well to accompany this film. So they were looking beyond just the theatrical release. They were like, all right, we can use this property to sell some games and get kids excited about The Keep. About Molasar and the SS soldiers. You'll want to play
Yeah.
as the SS soldiers.
Yeah. 8 to 10-year-olds worldwide getting into the role of SS officer Kempfer.
Yeah. That'll be the way to go. That is an interesting choice, I guess. But maybe they were doing that with like all the fantasy films back in the 80s. Wolfman, how old are you?
I am 36.
Okay. All right. So you're in our age range. So you have some recollection of that. I remember they did that with like Clue. They did
yeah.
like a video game, or not a video, but like a literal VHS tape game of that, or like certain things that came out during that time. They would always somehow try and like transform whatever the big popular movie of that time was into board game, RPG, or something like the videotape game.
The most successful version of that I remember, it actually happened in the 90s when they did the Jumanji board game for Jumanji,
That's right.
which that was perfect.
Mhm.
And the board game was actually a lot of fun. I remember playing it with my friends and it was bitching.
Yeah, I think I had more fun with the board game than I did the movie. I think that I liked the
yeah.
movie in theory.
Yeah.
And I would always wind up bored when I would put it on. It was one of those films for me.
No, I only watched it for David Allen Greer because I liked In Living Color back then.
Oh my God, I forgot he was even in the movie.
Oh yeah, dude, he's the cop.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Hans, what were you?
What
You were
about
about to say
the-
you share your favorite Jumanji memory, right?
Yeah. What about Kevin Hart's Jumanji?
I have that on my shelf over there in 4K pristine Blu-ray.
Nice.
That's the real Jumanji, as far as I'm concerned.
Closed box. Haven't opened it.
Yeah. You
Just
know what's
do
great
it.
about that
Takes
is
it back.
no one hopped in a tub and cut their wrists after making it.
Yeah.
So
Is that how he did it? It wasn't a choke jerk.
no, it was
situation?
for the last time. No, it wasn't a choke jerk. That was the movie. That was World's Greatest Dad. That's
I don't know why
a work of
you're
fiction.
pretending that I bring it up all the time.
You
No, I
brought
thought
it.
I thought he tried to slice his wrist, but it didn't take, and he hanged himself.
Here's what he did. Listen, he got in the tub. He cut his wrist. He put a bag over his head. He drowned himself.
Wow.
He did. He was very desperate to die.
Really
Yeah.
wanted to go. Jesus.
Well,
And then he masturbated so that the blood would flow quicker in his wrists.
so the Keep. What do you? All right, so I don't know where I put this as far as Michael Mann's films go, because there's a lot of aspects to this where I love the creativity of it,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't justify the whole piece as something that is high in quality necessarily. I don't even know if it's all that watchable or rewatchable rather. Um, but I don't know. I think a lot of the special effects in this movie I really enjoy. The soundtrack is fantastic.
Yeah.
You have Ian McKellen in old man makeup trying to sell that the best he can before he returns to his youthful, vibrant, gay self. And
Definitely.
it's I think I like the idea of the Keep more than I might enjoy the film itself.
Mm-hmm.
Where does it fall for you as far as Michael Mann's film? Are you a big Michael Mann guy as far as that goes?
I'm pretty big. There's still a few of his movies that I haven't seen. Like I'm not a cinephile, and I think part of the reason, the thing that's always stood in my way, is that if I like a movie, I'll watch it 30 times instead of like watching 30 movies once.
Right.
So yeah, there's still a lot of there's still a few Michael Mann flicks that I haven't seen. Like I still haven't seen Ali. I still haven't seen The Insider. I haven't seen anything new. Like I didn't see Black Hat or whatever it was. But
Black Hat was a surprise because I was expecting it to be far less competent than it was. But I checked that out after we did our show on the pilot episode of Tokyo Vice with Brendan and with Anthony. And that was one I had always intended to get around to because I hadn't seen Black Hat. I still haven't seen Public Enemies.
Public Enemies is great.
I've heard it's a very interesting way to helm that sort of period piece gangster drama with the way he shot it and
Yeah,
and the
it
soundtrack
has
and everything.
it has to grow on you. Like the first time I saw it, I didn't like it, and it was for that reason. Yeah, because it's like digital, it's very handheld. It was not the like beautiful staged like slow period piece that I kind of wanted it to be.
Mhm.
Like I went in expecting like a Frank Darabont version of that movie,
Right.
and it is not that. But after a few viewings and letting go of that and getting over it, the movie itself, I really enjoyed, and it's got one of those things that I've noticed about Michael Mann's work that I really enjoy, that I think is so interesting because he's such a very technical director. Is something I've noticed in a lot of his movies are these like fleeting fast romances that his characters have, like these men and women will meet and they'll make a choice, they'll like fall in love, they'll begin this sort of like this love affair, which on paper kind of seems like it would stand out, particularly in like a lot of the crime films that he does. But there's a line in Heat when Robert De Niro says life is short, anytime you get is luck. I think Michael Mann believes that. Like I think he believes that as a person, and I think that's why all the like most of the movies that he has, they have these like burning romances in the midst of these kind of technical and utilitarian stories.
Yeah, I would say Black Hat fits that description to a T as well, and
Okay.
maybe even Tokyo Vice. It is a recurring aspect to almost all of his films. The only one maybe that lacks that could be Manhunter. Maybe. Well, no, actually, no, because Francis Dollarhide has his romance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, so
And
yeah,
I wonder if that's part of what drew him to this project, is the like very fast, not as fast in the book obviously, but the like fast intense connection between Magda and Glacon.
Mm.
I wonder if that resonated with him.
Now, Hans, you had seen The Keep previously for our retrospective show. Did you get around to rewatching it for this program? All right, so here's what I'm curious to know is, what did you pick up on in your second viewing that maybe you didn't when we initially talked about it back in 2020, I think it was now?
It has one of the most awkward sex scenes I've ever seen in my life, where they just kind of rub against each other for way too long. And it's shot in a very uh, like Cinemax way, but without showing nothing. So it's just very sweaty, rubbing against each other, and then they get into like a Jesus pose, both of them, which is very weird. I think I agree with you with the fact that I like the concept more than the execution. I like the idea of the keep. I like the physicality of the place, and God damn, can you hear that fucking
Yeah,
dog?
don't worry about it.
Okay.
Listen. I've been cutting clips for YouTube, and all I hear is dogs distantly barking in the background. It's
We
fine.
have a fucking Rottweiler next door that won't shut up because there's neighborhood cats everywhere. Anyway, I like the first couple of deaths. I thought that was really well done with just like the hole, and they just the guy gets sucked into the hole. That first death I really liked, and I kind of wanted to see more of that. But then when you actually see the deaths, like Wolfman here said, he kind of just saps them to death, which is not very exciting. But I enjoy the canon like special effects that this movie has, and the ending. I was laughing when I was watching that. The Ian McKellen just flying around and throwing himself around to rocks. That was good. I don't think that was the intention. So probably like things that I wasn't supposed to like for reasons that I'm not supposed to like. But the idea of this giant place that has this hidden, we don't know what it is, that's killing soldiers, and then the fact that the Nazis have this feeling of like everything belongs to us, which is what ends up killing most of them. I really enjoyed that. It was a better copy than the one that I saw before too, so I was able to see a little bit more clearly the effects when they were happening. But yeah, I think like you said, the idea of what the story is, I like better than the actual execution of it.
And what was your takeaway on what you had gotten from the novel? I know you gave up on it. Maybe you ran out of time
Yeah.
or something. I originally listened to that audiobook, which is an Audible exclusive, by the way. I wish I still knew what the affiliate code for us was, because they don't they terminate you when they're ready to get rid of you, and you will get a notice for that. We haven't gotten a notice yet. Our old podcast got a notice for that after a couple of months. I can only imagine why. But we could have made a cool $15 converting people over. What a shame. But what did you make of the audiobook before you gave up on it?
It definitely has a lot of more introduction to what we're seeing. I like the way that they set it up. Like I said before, the first meeting that the Nazis have, just trying to figure out what this place is, what's happening, I know what we're going to do about it, and how some of them don't believe that what's happening is actually happening. I didn't like that part of the movie where it's very straight into, well, there's the building, and here's the Nazis, and they're gonna get killed, and they get killed immediately. We don't know what it is. I like the way that it was building for like I think it's like the first hour of the audiobook before they even get to the keep, or around that, where it's just creating the world, talking about Romania and the area where it's set up. I don't even know if they say Romania in the movie.
I don't think so. Now, as far as the book goes, correct me if I'm wrong. Are they being like warned by villagers not to go into that area, or am I just thinking of Dracula again?
No, in the book, the groundskeepers like warning them not to stay there overnight. Like they can stay in the village, but they can't stay in the keep.
That's right. Okay. All right. Yeah. There's a clear one-to-one borrowing from the Bram Stoker book as far as that goes. And if you take a look at any of the paperbacks to the keep that were released in the UK, they will just put a vampire on the cover. They'll just put a man with fangs on the cover, which, it goes right in the face of everything you see with this movie. But I don't know. As far as the book goes, continue, Hans. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh no, well that's the thing. That's where I got. I was listening to it when I was in the middle of my COVID thing, so I kept falling asleep, and then replaying the thing again, and then falling asleep. So I got like bits and pieces. But I started getting lost when it focused on the Ian McKellen character, and then he was just complaining about them getting killed by Nazis, and I don't know why they're doing this to us, type of thing. And then that's where it lost me, which was at around, I think, 5 hour mark around that time.
Okay. And
So yeah.
as far as Molasar goes in this movie, I think one of the big highlights we pointed to when we originally did that show with Kid Polaroid is the design of that character. And he goes through a couple of different evolutions throughout the film. Wolfman, I wanted to get your take on the general look of Molasar and how that changes, and what your thoughts on just the general special effects of this movie are.
Well, I mean, there are definitely some effects are better than others. Like the effect where he kind of first appears and he's just smoke.
Mm.
I thought that looked really bitchin'. And he's like carrying her name's Magda in the book. I think they changed her name for the movie, but he's carrying her back to her father. I thought that looked really good. I think there's a later scene where you can kind of see through the smoke, and you get like a skeletal, like musculature that looks pretty rad.
Mm-hmm.
His final form, it's a cool design. It looks a little stiff. But I also read that, like, and maybe I misread this, but that the special effects supervisor died like 2 weeks into post production, and the studio basically told Michael Mann to fuck himself and like do it on his own.
If I remember correct, I think it was the and I might have this wrong as well, but this is just going from intense research from a year and a half or 2 years ago. I think it was the guy who was supposed to handle all the practical effects on the set died before they started filming, and they didn't know how to properly maneuver a lot of those things, so that's why you have a stiffer Molasar.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, for this kind of movie, I can't imagine how bad you'd have to be sweating if you hear that guy has died.
Oh yeah.
Oh
God.
Man. What do you guys think that the contents of this movie is going to prevent like a proper cut from coming out? Just because, again, Wolfman, you noted that even in '83, the average American probably is not making the distinction between a German soldier and SS soldier.
Yeah.
And that's certainly not happening in 2022 in a Western country.
Oh no.
Do you think that that will prevent any sort of proper release of this movie? I don't know if you said you're not really a cinephile, but are you well versed at all on any like the boutique distributors like Criterion or Kino Lorber or any of these guys?
I mean, I'm aware of them. Like, I'm more aware of Criterion. I mean, maybe I feel like it would have to be a person, or it'd have to be a new company. Like, sort of like, I feel like if Cinestate were still around, like those guys might have had the balls to do something like that. But
God, I wish they were still around. Huh?
yeah, no
Don't you
shit,
wish,
man.
Don't you wish Cinestate was still around? Oh
No,
man.
why? Isn't it better what we got instead of Cinestate?
Well, the one big upside of that is we got Vincent Gallo back, but at what cost?
Yeah.
You know?
What's the company, Vinegar Syndrome? I can see them taking a go at that. They do take like exploitation and like obscure gory movies from the 70s and 80s. I could see them maybe putting out something like this.
The thing with Vinegar Syndrome is, though, they are best as like a restoration boutique distributor. So, if something's going to be low on special features, right? But something like this, you would have to imagine there's a wealth of behind-the-scenes material, and you could, there was actually supposed to be a documentary, I think, a while back on the making of The Keep, and it got abandoned. Maybe I'm imagining it. Let me take a look real quick. But I remember there being a campaign to do because for a period of time within like the past 5 or 6 years, there has been like a genre of documentary that focus on the making of horror films. I know there's a Pet Sematary documentary. I just watched a documentary released yesterday on the making of Stephen King's It, 1990, which was supposed to be far more extensive than it wound up being. I think they cut it at like 2 hours. And I believe they were promising it was going to be like a 3-4 hour documentary. They got Tim Curry out of his stroke-induced coma or whatever. He looks rough. He looks better, but he looks pretty bad.
Mhm.
Does he look
He could have
like
been a
Sid
cool
High in,
Molasar.
does he
Yeah.
look like Sid High in Three from Hell?
Yeah, he's on par with that. Again, he looks better than he did before. He can actually like speak and But yeah, they got a lot of the living actors for that film, and I remember it was supposed to come out either before It 2017 or It 2019, and it just the original director couldn't finish it. He couldn't lock it up. So some other guy came in, and then Bloody Disgusting, which is a horror publishing house that does articles. They've been around since like the early aughts. I remember checking them out when I was a kid. Wound up releasing it, and it was fine. But that was a big genre, is going back and delving into these older horror movies of the 1980s. There's an extensive like 5-hour, 6-hour Nightmare on Elm Street one. I think there's an 8-hour Friday the 13th documentary that goes through every single part of the series. And that's
I watched both of those.
Yeah, you checked both of those out?
Yeah, those are fun, especially if you're familiar at all with those movies.
Yeah, I probably especially enjoy the Friday the 13th one. Although I've always been a fan of Freddy.
What
more.
the Friday the 13th documentary was, I mean, it was not only interesting and fun to watch, but there was like a special perk, at least at the time that they made it. Like all the actresses who came back to do the documentary, they were all still hot. Like every single one of them was just a fucking fox. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, that's one of the best special features is hot old actresses. That's my favorite Criterion supplement.
They weren't old. They were like,
well,
like 40.
Old is subjective, Okay, all right. So yeah,
anyone older than us. That's too old for a lady. I found a Keep documentary called the World War II Fairy Tale that came out in 2016. Is that the one you're talking about?
yes,
There's like an Indiegogo.
that's right.
thing?
That's it. Yeah. Never released, right? They said, "Fuck you guys. We're keeping the money. We're not putting
No,
this
it
out."
says here that you could pre-order the Blu-ray copy of it. So I don't know if
When is it? Hold on. Pre-order. When is the release date though?
2016 December.
December of 2016. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
We'll just have to wait. Well, that's very unfortunate that they took everybody's money and never put out a movie. Wow. And we thought James Rolfe was the worst of the worst. Yeah.
There's 2020 on IMDb. If you search for a World War II fairy tale, the making of Michael Mann's The Keep, it says it was released on 2020, an hour and a half. But I'm not really finding a lot of information.
Maybe they got hit with a cease and desist from Paramount. But I can't imagine that would be the case. I mean, they allowed the Pet Sematary documentary. That was also Paramount. Maybe Michael Mann personally threatened them or something. I don't know. But what can he do? He doesn't have the rights. That's unfortunate. I think that would be extremely interesting to check out and get an idea of. Off the top of my head, I think Arrow would probably be a great option because they're always one of the best boutique distributors as far as supplements go. But a movie like this, sometimes you have to wait for an international company to pick up, which is maybe why the DVD only came out last year, I think, and through an Australian distributor. Are you checking out anything interesting off of that, Hans?
I'm trying to see if it was ever released.
I don't think it was. I think it was buried. Which, speaking of rare films, I just obtained a rare film today. I got Puddle Cruiser from Broken Lizard, the 1996 comedy, which is not available on streaming anywhere. Puddle Cruiser, starring Jay Chandrasekhar, the director of Easter Sunday, starring Joe Coy, released this year.
Have you seen it?
What? Easter Sunday?
No, Puddle Cruiser.
No, I have not seen it. Have you? You watched it?
You're in for a treat. It's not very good. It's unsurprisingly, it's the first one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's all right.
Yeah.
I intend on watching it down with my other new physical media purchase, Dr. Sleep, the director's cut, which I think we'll have to follow up on this whole trend of doing the book and the movie.
No, I don't think.
You're not a fan? That's all right.
No,
I think it
didn't see,
deserves a
I didn't
second
see
glance.
that one, but I knew a couple people who liked it.
A lot of people liked it. We're the sole dissenters of that
Yeah.
because it got universal critical praise, but nobody showed up to the theater to see it. Are you a fan of Stephen King at all, Wolfman?
Uh yes and no. Like I've read a few of his things. I like some of his stuff. A lot of his stuff I tend to like more in concept than in execution.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love Cycle of the Werewolf, obviously. Like the illustrated novella that he did that they based Silver Bullet off of, which is the greatest werewolf movie of all time.
I agree.
And like I enjoyed reading it, but I enjoy it for as much of a like psychotic mess as it is, like as much as I do for the parts that are actually good. Salem's Lot was pretty good. Yeah, it's weird because you read his books, and one of the things that always like takes me out is how dated they are, which normally doesn't bother me, but there's something I've noticed this specifically in horror writers. They're very fond of writing these like very explicit sex scenes, but they write them the way like it's like they're writing it for a woman to read it. Like they use very flowery, pretty language to describe what's happening. It sounds very Victorian, and I'm like, there are no women reading this book. It's like it's like weirdos and 14-year-old perverts. Like, let's spice this shit up, Steven.
It's because they're dorks. They don't fuck.
Yeah.
You think horror writers are fucking?
But they'll have like a
dorks.
character. They'll have a character in a book that takes place in the 80s, like genuinely refer to sex as making love. And outside of a rhythm and blues song, I don't think anyone should use that fucking phrase.
One thing I remember from it that I had to note on my episode of Perfume Nationalist is that it opens with a description of a gay man at the fair, and Stephen King likes to note you could see the outline of his erection through his pants. And it's not like an explicitly erotic scene. He's about to get gay bashed, but he's just walking around hard at the fair. Did you ever walk around hard at the fair?
No.
I mean, when I was a younger man, I was hard, in all sorts of places for no reason at all.
Yeah, on the bus,
Hans,
going to school.
Hans, have you ever been erect in a school?
No. Yes, when I was in school.
Oh,
yeah.
really? Can someone
Yeah.
just clip that
All the
before he starts trying to add context to it?
Yeah, on the bus, and you would just be like, "Oh, I guess I'm hard now. This is awkward." Sitting next to.
Children?
Yeah. Well, I was a child too, so.
Well, that part's irrelevant, huh? So yeah, I'll be checking out Doctor. I hated the book and I hated the movie, but I was just compelled to check out this director's cut, which is 3 hours long. They tacked on an extra 30 minutes.
Damn.
The
It was long enough already. It was way too long and already as with the theatrical. Wasn't it like 2.5?
It was.
Ugh.
I don't know. So I don't know like who he pissed off, but like when are they gonna let Ewan McGregor like speak in his actual voice in a film again? Like that motherfucker hasn't used his own voice in like 15 years.
Maybe he forgot. Maybe he doesn't have that accent anymore.
Yeah,
Just
maybe
like
it's just gone.
Mel Gibson, if you ever see Mel Gibson in any interview now, there's not a trace of Australian there. But if you take a look at an interview he conducted from like the early 90s or something, it's very much so there. Gary Oldman is another guy where he just forgot how to use his real voice because he did so many fucking characters that he sounds like an American now. Wow. I don't know. The last thing that I remember hearing Ewan's natural voice in was Train Spotting 2.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, they did that. I never saw that.
Were you a fan of the original at all?
I was like, I remember back when I was younger and I was getting, I always loved watching movies as a kid, but as I got older and I got into high school, like I was broke and I wasn't very good at much, so I was kind of building my identity around like being the movie guy because I could get like VHS tapes for cheap, and so that's when I started like branching out. You could still rent movies, so at the time I remember thinking like, ooh, Train Spotting, this is like edgy out there cinema, and I'm blowing all my friends' minds with this obscure film. And now it's like everybody and their fucking mother's seen Trainspotting.
Well, that's just a symptom of modern times. Is all these niche films that, I mean, not that that was a niche film necessarily, but all these niche films have become kind of mainstreamed as a result of the internet. Like I'm trying to think of a good example of that. Hans, off the top of your head, I feel like this happens with horror way more than it happens with any other genre. Maybe something like Halloween 3, because everybody hated Halloween 3, and now everybody loves Halloween 3. As a matter of fact, Halloween 3 is the best Halloween. That's the general take now. It wasn't so popular to say that when I was saying that in 2015. Yeah, I'll be a hipster about it, but that's a that's certainly a trend. Trainspotting is one of my favorite movies.
Oh yeah, I loved it since I first saw it, and I had Danny Boyle and that trio. I forget the other guys' names, but like the first three movies, like Shallow Grave, Trainspotting, and A Life Less Ordinary, I had all those on VHS.
John Hodge
Yeah,
John
yeah.
Hodgman.
Mm-hmm.
They got back together for Trainspotting 2, and then they worked together again. Maybe it was on that Sex Pistols Hulu show that was released, which unfortunately is not good, but it is really great to look at. It is one of the most visually appealing and interesting things that I've seen produced by any major studio, but it's horrible. The acting sucks, the writing is terrible, but it looks good. It looks like pretty authentic 16 millimeter dirty grunge soft like late 70s early 80s looks, but it's just every time someone opens their mouth you want to fucking kill yourself. It's horrible.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up because I wanted to ask you fellas this. You guys are still like very committed and watching, like in addition to watching older things, you're watching newer stuff, things that are being made today, which I've completely sworn off, and have done for the last several years. I've never been so like disinterested in film or television as I am now. I wanted to ask, is there is there enough good stuff being done out there, or is it as bleak as I think it is?
Hans, you want to start with that one?
Oh,
I think I
fuck.
already know Hans's answer.
I think there's fuck. I can't confidently say yes, because I feel like most of the shit we watch is terrible, or something that I might start liking falls apart very quickly. I watched what is that Rian Johnson movie that is like Guess Who? No, like Clue.
Knives Out.
That was a piece of shit, that movie. Jesus fucking Christ. I don't understand the praise. Everyone talks the same. Every character is just very snippy and very fast talking. And then things get resolved in a very convenient way that would only happen if, you suck at writing. That was a one that I put off watching just because of all the praise that it got. And when that happens, usually the movie's not very good. And I watched that last night, and it was terrible. So I think you kind of have to search for filmmakers or people that whose work you enjoy already, because I don't know if I've watched anything by anyone new or someone that I didn't know that I've enjoyed. There's just a lot of content that is just content, but nothing memorable, or nothing that you're going to be talking about in a year or two.
Well, yeah, that's how it seems. It seems like there's no art, there's only content.
Yeah.
Well, I see. Okay, I would say that 2019 was probably like the last year where we got like a solid boom of very good movies, and then obviously 2020 was horrible. 2021 was not very good at all.
Yeah.
2022 has been pretty good as far as like movies going to theaters. I mean, between Vortex, Elvis, I know Hans, you surprisingly were not a fan of The Northman. We still got to get around to doing a show on that at some point.
Yeah, I still got to see that.
Ted K was kind of an interesting indie film with Sharlto Copley giving his first good performance since, what was it, District 9 or something?
District 9.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. There's been a lot of kind of interesting mid-budget movies that have been released this year. I would hesitate from calling most of them great. I would say that the only two that I think are genuinely great and will endure are Elvis and Vortex. I mean, even Top Gun Maverick, which everybody's like, movies are back, movies are safe. It's all Top Gun. It's all on the shoulders. I enjoy Top Gun Maverick a lot. It's probably my top 5 for the year by default, but it's nothing special. It's not something you're going to watch as soon as it's out of theaters, which is why they've kept it in theaters for like 4 months now. It's very 1970s, 1980s-esque how they're milking this film and letting it rise to the top, which I don't hate that they're doing that. I kind of like that there's less options at the theater compared to before, because it's easier to dismiss everything that goes to streaming, which is almost always all shit.
Yeah.
I think it's also a lot of just the same. Like, no one's coming up with new concept. No one's coming up with anything new and interesting that, again, will be memorable or worth watching in a couple of years. A lot of it is just rehashes or reimagining or remakes of things that don't need to be remade and don't really add anything new or interesting to what was already made. So they try to I guess, insert creativity in ways that don't make any sense or that don't fit what the thing is supposed to be. So then it's just a mess that has a target audience of nobody. And I feel like that happens a lot more now, or at least I'm noticing it a lot more now than with movies in previous years.
Yeah, I had like a short list there for a while of guys that were still working, and not like the big guys, not like Tarantino or the Coen brothers, or I don't know. I don't even know who still fucking makes movies anymore. But yeah, I like Egger's first 2 movies. I still have to see The Northman. I was digging Zoller for a while, but it looks like he's just done. I don't know. I don't think there's any
That's
news
so
coming up on him.
unfortunate. I just read. I didn't just read it. I read it like early this year. His graphic novel he put out. The name is long and complicated. I forget what it is. Let me Google that real quick. He's a very solid writer in every medium.
Oh yeah, he's like, I've got several of his novels. I've read 3 and I'm reading the 4th one right now. And I've dug all of those. Yeah, I've heard talks on and off about him doing stuff and it always falls through. I like Taylor Sheridan, but he's pretty much, he's taken up with the Yellowstone TV shows. I think there's like 6 of them now.
Yeah.
And then who's the other one? Yeah, I like Refn, but I don't know if he's ever gonna get back to like his Pusher style or even like closer to Drive. I think he's just gonna keep pushing these like 3-minute still shots of someone not speaking.
Just being weird because it's him.
As long as someone pays for it, that's going to be his MO for a while. He has to fall. Once he fails, that's when he comes back and does something great. There's a I don't know if you've seen the documentary Gambler, which details that, which is I think it was Fear X, cost him a whole bunch of money. He had to put his own money into the film, and it got him in debt. And he was like, all right, well, I don't know what to do now because I've lost my opportunity at rising in Hollywood in the English-speaking market. What can I possibly do? And that's when he goes and does Pusher. He decides to franchise his movie, which nobody would ever think to do that. We're going to do Pusher 2, 3, and he was going to do Pusher 4 with the Arab actor who's in Pusher 3, but that guy got locked up, and so that was nixed. And arguably, I mean, I think there's a case that can be made that Pusher 2 is his strongest, or one of his strongest movies.
Yeah.
Now, as far as Zoller goes, I don't know. I feel like he knocked those 3 movies out in rapid succession and then lost his confidence or something, and he's not rushing back to directing. Because he had a project that was lined up with Amazon, which was going to be his script, directed by Park Chan-wook, and starring Matthew McConaughey, which just sounds off the charts insane for talent goes. And now that doesn't appear to be happening. And I know he wants to do a Hug Chicken Penny film in like a Jim Henson style, but it doesn't look like there's really a market for that, or the studios don't see a market for that where they feel comfortable investing $20 million, $40 million, however much money that might take to pull off. So
I tell you, the way to do that, the way they need to do that is get the guys who did Coraline. Get those guys to make the Hug Chickapinny movie.
that could be good. So I don't know what his MO is for now. I think he's just kind of retreated into writing novels where he's not going to get any sort of pushback or have to deal with the politics of Hollywood at the moment. And I can't blame him, but
Yeah.
again, more wasted talent as far as I'm concerned.
I think bringing it back to Refn, I think the perfect property for him would be to do.
The Keep, I agree. I think that would be amazing.
I wasn't going to say The Keep. I was going to say Crying Freeman. Are you too familiar with that property?
I am not.
It's an older, like 80s, hyper violent, hyper erotic anime. Like back before they got all weird and pedo-y in the 90s. Like back when they were like just very like visceral and disturbing. But yeah, it's about this like Yakuza assassin. You may have seen pictures of it, but he's just like this jack dude in a Speedo who's covered in this Yakuza tattoo. And he kills gangsters, but he feels great remorse afterward and he cries. It's there's more to it than that, but it's very fucking bonkers. It's super violent. It's very stylish and slick. And I think if he just went and whitewashed it and put Gosling in that role and just ignored the Japanese element and went for it, I think it would be huge.
They did that in 95? Starring the Iron Chef, Mark the Cascus?
Yeah.
Well, not, yeah, he's the Iron Chef now. At the time, he was the Iron Chef's nephew, right?
Is he even Asian?
Yeah. No, he's I think he's mixed. I think he's
American.
like
He's from
Filipino
Hawaii.
and
Yeah, he's
Japanese
Hawaiian.
and- oh yeah.
He's Hawaiian. That's not real. That's like me pulling fucking Asian.
Hans, did you not see the illustration of you on my Instagram? You're plenty Asian, okay?
Yeah, it's just a chubby face Asian old man with thick eyebrows. Yeah,
That's you, Hans. Can't you tell? Can't you look in the mirror and see yourself, Hans?
Oh,
What
yeah.
was the prompt that you gave? Because yours looks a lot.
Prompt? I
Greeker than
hired
you
an
are.
illustrator. I said, hey, here's a picture of Hans. Could you just draw this man? That's what I did. Prompt.
Yeah, and then he gave you like a curly, weird fucking Jerry curl on top of your head. That was
Yeah,
good.
that's
too.
right. He made me a Polish Jew. That's
I mean,
correct.
that looks like the cover of a Park Chan-wook movie right there.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. It could be, I've said this before about Refn's career. He's kind of like a transgender director where he started as like ultra masculine, violent, and then he just gradually becomes like a beautiful flower.
Uh-huh.
And that's essentially what his career. So he needs to flop. He needs to make a real dud of a movie next. He needs another. I mean, Only God Forgives. People did not respond to that, but that was a lot of clearing out the crowd that was there just for Drive. I think if he did another one of those, then maybe we would see something pretty decent. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Too Old to Die Young? Because I was not a fan of that.
So I felt about that the way I felt about Twin Peaks: The Return. I thought it was a masterclass in like antagonizing your audience. I felt like I was being like actively trolled and provoked, and I got a kick out of that. I laughed a lot at the show because I could just see him enjoying tormenting the audience. But I thought like episodes 4, 5, and 6, that chunk in the middle, I thought that was really good. I thought you could really see like Ed Brubaker's writing in there, who I'm a fan of. And that's when it really started to get like some speed, and the art of it and the style of it, like with the actual plot finally picking up. I thought that got really interesting. But like that second episode especially, that's a complete slog. My hat's off to anyone who can get through it. And then after episode 6, it became so preachy, it like inverted itself. where it was so heavy-handed in what it was doing that it basically made the opposite point. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. What are you referring to? Like the cops parading around and
Yeah.
acting like cartoon characters, essentially. Yeah, I agree with you. There were definitely aspects of it that I enjoyed that felt like classic Refn,
Mm.
where he wasn't indulging too much. And I would cite it as, yeah, 4, 5, and 6, those middle episodes, which I think were the episodes they premiered at Cannes or Sundance or something. That's, clearly where he had his most confidence. And a lot of the rest felt like filler to me.
Yeah.
Especially once like the entire last third of the series is essentially dedicated to this Latino gangster getting pegged by his girlfriend's sister, whatever, some kind of relation to him. He's got mom issues. They all have
Yeah.
mom issues in a Refn film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm interested to see what he does with Maniac Cop. I think that could be fun.
Is
That's
that
still
even happening though? I feel like that's kind of on this list. I feel like there's a lot of projects that I remember hearing about years ago that just haven't gone anywhere, and maybe it's just due to COVID.
Well, I think we checked in on that kind of recently. Like Hans, didn't you look it up? I think a couple of shows ago, and it turned out it was still happening because I thought that was definitely dead on arrival. He also had something that he was going to be directing a film called, I think the Avenging Silence was the title, and he made a post about that with a little mock poster on Instagram, and there's been nothing on that. But in the interim, he shot a Netflix show with his daughter.
What was that about?
I have no clue. I think it was like her on a ranch or something. It might be a reality show. I have
Ugh.
no clue.
Oh.
How's it looking, Hans?
The I have. Let me see.
You got to
It's
come in
just
a little bit
gonna be-
closer.
It's gonna be a series. The most recent news is from January 27th, saying that it's going to be a TV series for HBO. Maniac Cop.
Yeah, which is the same news from like 2015 or 2014.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing new.
Well, I think they should do. Here's what they can do: get J.J. Abrams and do The Keep as a Netflix series. You could do it as an HBO Max series. Didn't he do Lovecraft Country or one of those shows? And then you
That
get
was Jordan. That was Jordan Peele.
Yeah, that's a
Oh.
big piece of shit.
Yeah, he'll put his name on fucking any horrible show. Like
Yeah.
I checked out the pilot because it was like Al Pacino's coming to television, and it was him as the Nazi hunter for that show Hunters. And I was like,
Oh
this is
God.
Oh,
the worst writing I've ever seen for a streaming show. I should have known something was up when they cast the guy who played Ted Mosby on How I Met Your Mother, and they had him like dress up as like a 70s like Jufro kind of guy. That was horrible.
oof. Yeah, no, I never watched that.
Maybe you should watch it. Maybe you should watch all the episodes and tell us what you think about them, Hans.
Yeah. Do you think we're gonna do an episode on Nope? Did you like Nope?
I don't know. Well, Wolfman, do you have any thoughts on Jordan Peele, the director?
I'll be honest. I haven't seen any of his films.
You're probably better for it.
I didn't see Get Out because I had the ending spoiled for me almost immediately. And I was like, all right, well, I don't give a shit now.
Yeah, it was
And
the
then- but-
white people.
Yeah, exactly. But now that now that he's now that it's clear that he's just gonna stick with that theme, which normally wouldn't bother me, but I think it's so odd that it's always guys with one or more white parents
Mm-hmm.
that always take this stand. And it's like, how do you fucking go home for Thanksgiving when you've got one parent where your entire body of work is just being like, hey, you and everything you passed on to me is evil and dog shit.
I think it's an overcompensation because they have that white side to them. And I think he grew up with
yeah.
a silver spoon in his mouth. I'm pretty sure he's from a pretty affluent area of New York City.
Oh, of course.
So
It's the same thing with Donald Glover. Like his
Mm.
whole career is like so obviously contrived, where like he becomes famous for like being like this like very nerdy, very white kind of comedian, and then realizes that he doesn't have any black fans, so he reinvents himself as a rapper, but only white people listen to it.
Yeah.
And then like Tina Fey, who's sort of like his patron, doesn't like rap because it's misogynistic, so he reinvents himself again as socially conscious rapper, and he gets that buck broken hair and beard that all those guys do when they get serious.
Yeah, I'm not gonna shave for a couple of days, so my beard is just coming out. It's like I just woke up, but not really. It's very
Yeah.
manufactured.
Mhm.
Well, and it's not even to say that he's not talented, but I don't know. It just he seems like they both seem very inauthentic.
No edge at all.
Oh,
Just
none,
very
none whatsoever.
just manufactured. Just very, I'll be what you want me to be type of thing.
Right. And as far as Donald Glover goes, he's a good actor or whatever, but all the credit he's gotten for Atlanta, his FX show, should be given to that Japanese man who has directed every single episode. Is like the art director of that show as well, who is very good with other non-Donald Glover related things. And Donald Glover, I mean, it could be debated whether or not that same quality is maintained beyond Atlanta. As far as Jordan Peele goes, I actually don't mind him as a director for the most part. I think he's just extremely overrated, and it makes it very difficult to take that aside when watching his movies and being able to personally, critically receive them. Because I remember when I watched Us, his second film, people were like, "Oh, it's so introspective as far as the American experience and how there's a class system in place that." Yeah, okay, sure, shut the fuck up. And you watch it, and it's like it's not that deep.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's whatever. And then you watch it a couple of years after the fact, once you get away from that bubble of context, of social context. And it's like, this is kind of an enjoyable, stupid horror film with Tim Heidecker being an asshole in the supporting role. And that's about it. That's about the extent of it. And it seems like Nope is more in line with that, where it's not as political. It's just him doing a pseudo UFO movie, I guess, and toying around with that more than anything that's a socio-political cause.
Well, that's the problem with his fans, I think, because I don't know if he's as deep as they would want him to be, or as they pretend that he is, because you got to remember, he's coming from Key and Peele, right? He's coming from Mad TV. He's coming from silly, dumb comedy.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, he's been elevated to this Kubrick-like filmmaker, where everything he does has a hidden meaning, and there's politics on everything. And he's not saying this; he's trying to say this other thing that I made up in my head that has nothing to do with what you're watching on screen, but it's there. So when you watch Us, I remember the whole narrative around it was, like you said, the class differences and all this shit, and then you watch, it's just like, yeah, like a silly movie, people talking with like a silly voice, and oh, it's doubles, okay, and then people get killed, cool, and then, hey, holding hands across America or whatever, and it's like, it's a fucking movie. Like, people try to find a lot of meaning on things that are not that deep, and then he produces things like the Candyman remake, which is another one where people were trying to find like a deeper meaning to this movie, and how, race and all this bullshit.
I don't know.
And it's just a
I
fucking
enjoyed the
bad
Candyman
movie.
Listen, I gave that
yeah.
a good review for that show.
Yeah,
I thought that was better than the original.
Hans, are you just sore about Candyman because of your medical condition?
I wish I liked it more. I hated it. It didn't really do anything that worked for me as far as I can remember it. And I just feel like, for whatever reason, this guy has been elevated to a brilliant everything. And then when you actually watch what he's done, if you forget about all the politics that other people attach to them, they're fine. And that's it. There's not really that much depth that goes into it. But now, he wears glasses and cardigans, so he's, a scholar now, a real filmmaker. And I just don't see it, or at least haven't seen it in anything he's done yet.
I think that's been a problem in movies for a long time, though, is like the idea that like everything's brilliant. Like, everything has to be brilliant. It can't just be good.
Mm-hmm.
So if something's just good, everyone makes it out like it's the next greatest thing.
I mean, that's a very good point. I don't think people were in the theater watching They Live from John Carpenter going, this is a brilliant film. This is brilliant
Yeah.
social commentary. No, it's very obvious social commentary, but
Yeah.
it's enjoyable. And the two
Right.
lead actors are enjoyable, and the design is enjoyable. And that's all you really need to do to have a successful film. It doesn't need to be some sort of intellectual masterstroke. And that's kind of how I see Jordan Peele's films. Is it's on par with a lot of '80s movies that also had social messages or whatever baked into them, and usually weren't as on the nose, but were pretty obvious. They're fine. They're very watchable, rewatchable. Not maybe not, but that's about the extent of his career to date, anyway.
On par with Shyamalan for me. That's the type of like quality of these movies. Like I don't hate Shyamalan. I think we've talked very positively about him in this podcast, but he's also someone that's already peaked, I think,
Mhm.
and has his good movies and his terrible movies, and you kind of know what you're getting out of his films. I feel like he's in a very similar level where at the beginning of his career he was very overrated, and everyone was thinking that. Again, I think a couple of magazines even put him in the cover, being like the next Kubrick or whatever. Right?
Next Spielberg, and I think that
Spielberg,
was
right.
Hollywood Reporter or something, or one Variety.
Right, and I wonder if it's that because there's no interesting artists out there anymore. The last one that still has stayed relevant and kept his qualities probably Tarantino. Everyone else I feel like has either fallen off or disappeared, and it's possible that people are just starved for that new I guess, yeah, Kubrick or the new name, but I just don't see anyone right now. It's a working director that could claim that. Even someone like Eggers, whose films have a distinct quality and a very distinctive visual style, but I don't know if we need that. Let's wait and see if history gives them that title. Why do you have to give them that title after they made 2 or 3 movies?
Well, I think a big motivation for it now is you can definitely tell the way they talk about a lot of this shit. There is like extreme generational insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the like millennial and now probably like older Zoomers who are like making their way in the business, I think they're getting a sense that they are not producing much of any lasting merit. Which is not to say that they never will. I think there's actually a very strong chance that like the millennial generation could make some pretty significant contributions, but it will be later. Like it will be like when they hit their 50s. And that will be like when they have like some serious perspective on like what our generation was and its place in the chain link of history. But that's not to say that it will happen, but I do think it's possible.
Well, I think there's certainly more going for that outcome than, not to immediately dismiss Generation Z, but it doesn't seem like anything particularly worthwhile is going to be coming out of that particular generation of people. But then again, it's early yet. These people are only like 20 years old, 25 years old at this point. Hans, you're Gen Z, right? So
Right.
maybe you'll do something great.
Do you want to talk about that new Russo brothers that I know you really liked?
Oh yeah, speaking of Refn and Gosling, Ryan Gosling, he must be hurting for money, I guess. Between this and, I mean, look, you can make the argument Barbie's not going to be commercial direct because they got Noah Baumbach writing the script and Greta Gerwig is directing that, so it's gonna be like pretentious commercial garbage. But The Gray Man, my God, what? No, I won't even start with My God. It's just whatever. It's so like Netflix, It was whatever. It was exactly what you think it is. That's the thing about The Gray Man. But I would love for him to get a string of flops and start doing more interesting movies, being a little more desperate for whatever role he can get. So maybe Refn and him team back up and do something.
Crying Freeman.
Yeah, you could do that.
I'm telling you, man, that's a slam dunk.
I think maybe what Refn is lacking right now is he needs like that other person to have a sort of symbiotic relationship with, because it was Mads Mikkelsen for a second, and then it became Ryan Gosling, and I think he was sizing up Miles Teller to be that guy, and it doesn't look like it's going that way. Miles Teller, he's very lucky he got Top Gun. I'll say that. Between doing The Offer, which is that Paramount Plus adaptation of the book about the making of The Godfather, where he's, I mean, you could argue he's not worthwhile to that, but he's the only worthwhile component of that series. Everybody else is giving really bad impressions, and the writing is horrible.
Finish it?
No, I didn't finish it. Fuck that. No, come on. I'm not going to spend 12 hours on The Offer. But it seems like he can't really get it right otherwise. Even that Netflix movie he did with, I think it was, what was it, Chris Hemsworth, who was also directed by the man who did Top Gun Maverick, didn't perform up to standard.
Oh, yeah, that was a piece of shit too. I watched that. What's it called? It's about, like drugs and like people that live in a facility that are being manipulated by gigantic scientist Chris Hemsworth. It's bad, but yeah, he's I feel like he makes like 5 movies and one of them hit, and then the other 4 are just either whatever or bad. But he's gotten very lucky with the ones that have hit. Like you got Whiplash, that I still feel like it's really good.
Yeah.
And then this hit that was Maverick, that I don't know if anyone was expecting this movie to be so successful, and he happens to be in it. So he's got a very up and down career, but I don't know if I would put him in the same category as Ryan Gosling or worse, Mads Mikkelsen, who's one of my favorite actors. Who I think he's always good on everything that he's in, even if it's a piece of shit. Maybe reference should go back to him. You know?
I think
interesting.
I think Miles Teller might get interesting if he can hang in there like in a few years, because he kind of has that quality for me that Jennifer Lawrence has, where it's like there's something about them where they're so baby faced that like when they're playing adults now, they just seem like young people playing dress up.
Yeah.
Like I don't
He
buy
definitely
them as
has that.
adults.
He definitely has that vibe in Top Gun Maverick, where he has like a shitty mustache to invoke Goose, and it doesn't look right on his face. It looks very, especially for like a man in his mid-30s, I think he is now. He should be able to grow a much thicker one than that. It doesn't look natural to him. So
yeah, they gave him a Jamie Foxx mustache. It's weird. It's just very thin and little.
Mm. That's just a black guy mustache, Hans. That's not Jamie Foxx specific. All right. Do we have anything else we can add about The Keep or about Michael Mann in general, just to add a bookend to this show?
One thing I wanted to bring up about The Keep, and looking into the book and such, I couldn't find anything about this, but I'm wondering if Paul Wilson got any inspiration from what happened with Rudolf Hess at the end of his life, because Rudolf Hess, infamous, member of the Nazi high command. After the Nuremberg trials, he was sentenced to life in prison at Spandau prison, which was basically a decommissioned castle in West Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And he, at the time of his death, he was the only prisoner in there. I think when they put him in, there were a couple other guys in there, but for I think decades, he was just this lone man imprisoned in a castle, under heavy guard. And then in the 80s, when he died, they had like bulldozers on site, on standby, ready to tear down the castle like immediately. Which, to get like I feel like if you get conspiratorial, or if you have the mind of a horror writer, I feel like that's ripe for inspiration. Just the suspicious nature of that.
Yes, the ghost of Hess. Yeah, that could be. That's very spooky. I mean, when was the book published? I feel like it would be right around the time. Do you know when he died?
Hess?
Yes.
I think it was 87.
Okay, so this book would probably predate.
This came out in 81.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, of course, The Keep was 83, the movie. But By the way, I'm currently in a bidding war for a hardcover first edition of The Keep on eBay, right? They're pretty pricey. They're anywhere from like $80 to $107. It's got kind of a cool cover, an inappropriate. There's like a little Nazi flag in the bottom, and they're doing the SS thing with the logo. Anyway, you would have to think that he was doing all sorts of research on Nazi Germany in general. Maybe that was at the forefront of his brain or somewhere in his unconscious. That's a very interesting fact, though. I didn't know that about Hess or the end of his life. Can you imagine just being king of your own castle? That sounds
awesome.
like a dream.
Yeah, but you can't leave.
Well, why would you want to leave? It's your
Yeah.
It's your castle.
It's the
Hesse's
ultimate
castle.
dilemma. Yeah, he's like Molasar.
He's truly Molasar in the most
Very
true sense.
Nosferatu. Very Nosferatu ending for him. Yeah.
He should have just grew his fingernails out and sharpened his teeth and walked around like this to scare the guards, make it extra spooky for them. I don't know. Which did you guys prefer? Did you prefer the book or did you prefer the movie?
On the whole, in terms of the story, I definitely preferred the book. It's just so rich. Like I really enjoyed the book. I want to read more of Wilson's stuff. I want to get into the adversary cycle, I think is what the series is called. And he apparently has this character who's pretty popular in genre circles called Repairman Jack, who I want to look into. He sounds like a paranormal problem solver, something like that. So I want to give that a shot. But it's weird, even watching the movie again, and I found it kind of frustrating. There's something about it that I don't know that makes it so haunting isn't the word, but I don't think it's a movie you can dismiss. I feel like if you watch it, it's gonna stick with you.
I think that's a pretty solid way to put. There's so much that's going for it that doesn't feel totally complete, and that's I think the biggest tragedy about it is you have so much quality in all these different aspects, and it doesn't exactly come together, but it still creates something that's very interesting as far as I'm concerned, as far as film goes, and is worth visiting maybe just on those grounds alone. What about you, Hans?
I think it's a fine one-time watch. I don't know if I would rewatch it or if I would go back for any reason other than, I don't know. I couldn't think of anything that I would want to see again from the movie other than maybe when the monster appears and all those effects, because I love shitty 80s effects, but it drags a lot too. Once the Ian McKellen character appears, I feel like that instead of elevating the movie, it brings it down a little bit more instead. It focuses a lot on him and he's just not very good in it. And then it just drags until the end. I was pretty bored for the last half hour of it. I think for half 45 minutes. So I didn't finish the book. I got lost and by listening to it. I'm not very familiar with audiobooks. I don't know why I thought that it would be like an old radio show with like Foley and shit like that.
You thought it was going to be a production.
Yeah, in this one, it's just a guy doing most of the voices, if not all of them, and it when he was doing the Jewish character, it felt very stereotypical. Very
Could you
like
just do an emulation of that real quick, just for those who haven't listened to the audiobook?
No, I couldn't even think of a line from it other than like, no, I can't do it.
Oh,
but
you
then
backed out.
But then another thing about the movie that really bothered me was that the German
Jewish character.
Yes, but besides the Jewish guy, the German Nazis, they just had Arnold-like accents. Like it was just very put on, bad, fake German accents. Just make them, talk like Americans in that case, because then it's just silly, because it's just pretending to be German, but they're obviously not how Germans would speak, I guess. And they were Nazis communicating in English with like a bad Mad TV like accent. That was kind of off-putting.
That was the choice of the narrator. Typically, you do whatever you want if you're the narrator of the book. But yeah, I mean, I didn't think he was bad. I mean, as far as it being one guy, that's all audiobooks, Hans. That's every single audiobook for the most part. Very rarely, maybe if it's like a short story anthology or something along those lines, they'll jump between multiple narrators, or if there's, let's say, 3 points of view, 3 different characters, then they might dice it up that way. But for the most part, this is pretty bog standard. And I thought it was decent. I was expecting when I originally downloaded it that it was going to be a book on tape, which I had a book on tape version that had been uploaded to the internet of Stephen King's It before. And the audio on that is just really difficult to stand because there's a constant cassette tape hiss as the man is speaking. But no, they decided to release a newly recorded audiobook for Audible within the past 10 years, I guess. And the quality's good. It's very good.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it should be more like the old Vincent Price radio shows where they have like Foley work and thunder and shit like that. Make it more of an experience than just there's a man reading a book. That's cool. Not very appealing to me. I don't know.
Maybe you should go back to 1940, you old fuck.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to listen to Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. Get invested in it.
Yes, that's more interesting than this one man reading Jewish voice.
Yeah, imagine being Rudolph Hess all alone in your castle listening to The Shadow on the fucking radio.
I'll say this. I think that the book is clearly of superior quality in terms of being able to get invested in the characters or the storyline or anything like that. But just as far as the depths of creativity and the style, I quite enjoy The Keep, and I probably prefer it. I see them as almost 2 separate things entirely just because of those tonal differences.
Yeah.
And what The Keep as a movie represents in being this flawed, artistic, I won't say masterpiece because it's not a masterpiece in any regard, but just a flawed, interesting piece of art.
Monster that was rejected by its creator.
Oh, that's real. That's very Jordan Peele of you to put it that way.
Well, I'd like to see Mann tackle something like this again. Like go really out of genre, like out of type.
That would be fun to see him tackle anything that requires, either fantastical or horror elements. But it seems like he's kind of gotten comfortable in his mid-budget, single guy taking on one little goal, and maybe it's a period piece or something. Black Hat is kind of that way. Tokyo Vice. Have you checked out Tokyo Vice at all, by the way, Wolfman?
I have not. I kept up with kind of your and Anthony's commentary, and I listened to the episode that you guys did with Brendan and Anthony. And yeah, it didn't really sound like it was worth jumping into, especially when I heard that Michael Mann, it's not even really his show. Mm-hmm. Which that's part of the reason why I've just kind of bowed out of watching anything new is I'll hear about something and it's like, oh, Michael Mann, a show called Tokyo Vice. That sounds incredible. And then the closer it gets to the thing becoming a reality, the more all of those components get stripped away. And then it winds up not being a thing that you would get excited about.
Well, what I'll say about Tokyo Vice is this. He only directed the first episode. I read the book Tokyo Vice by Jake Adelstein a couple of years ago, and I remember it frequently veering away from him trying to crack this like sex trafficking case and how it intertwined with the Yakuza, so he could write chapters upon chapters of him fucking prostitutes and talking about how good his sex style was and how she was so impressed with his peace and all that. You know, it's
With
Japan.
Ansel
so-
Elgort.
Yeah, well, no, Ansel Elgort's a much more handsome man than the real Jake Adelstein. So he got a good deal there. Okay, they could.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if he's fucking horrors and it's a human trafficking thing, that just sounds like good research.
yeah, that's really
like good-
boots on the
good-
ground.
good detective
research.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So the book I thought was kind of whatever. It starts off well and isn't really my cup of tea by the end of it. With the series, not dissimilar. So Michael Mann, he knew that this series was coming out and was like, oh, well, that sounds kind of similar to Miami Vice. Why don't I just get involved here? Why don't I just step in and make this my project? And he kind of did that a little bit. I think he was just more giving pointers on how to handle certain aspects of the show. But he directed the first episode, the pilot, and then they had some other guy handle the rest of it. And you can really see the difference. And what I would compare that to is you take a look at the direction of that first episode, and it feels like a workman did that. And then with the other episodes, it's more like it feels manufactured. Feels more, all right, this goes here, this goes here. This will all be on the assembly line. This is not going to be personal, like what man has created. Because there's so many, again, to use this word, flawed, creative choices in that Tokyo Vice pilot where it's like the audio is bad here. There's a loud hiss. There's like a weird tracking shot, and the camera jilts in a way that's unprofessional. There's a lot of aspects of that you don't see at all anymore in films, especially from such established directors who are afraid of coming, well, the young established directors, I think, are very nervous about letting those things come up in their work because they won't be taken seriously. But in reality, what you do is you wind up over polishing it, and it voids it of any real character.
Yeah. No,
So-
I'd agree with that.
That's really the difference there between the first episode of Tokyo Vice and the rest. The first one I think is worth watching just as like a little mini film for Michael Mann. The rest is enjoyable for an HBO Max show, but what does that even really mean?
Yeah.
Content.
Yeah, it's something to watch. It's something to try to look forward to once a week.
Well, I was watching Miami Vice, but they took it off the Roku channel. So now I'm just going to have to buy the damn DVDs. It was getting great too, man. I was like halfway through season 2.
Oh yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
that's really where you want to be because Michael Mann leaves Miami Vice I think around the end of season 2 or early season 3. I have the Blu-ray box set which has all the episodes, and it goes to some weird places later on in the show. Like they completely almost entirely weed out Don Johnson's partner. His name's not coming. Philip Michael Thomas, I think his name.
Yeah, Tubbs.
Yeah, Tubbs. They start to weed him out significantly, and it becomes the Don Johnson show, and he grows his hair long, and it's about him dating some famous actress or something. He's like a famous PI, famous detective now, and Hollywood.
Tubbs. Like it's the two of them is what makes it work.
I know, but it goes to a strange place, and
that breaks my heart.
The series finale isn't even like that, like big of an event or anything. They just kind of treat it like a procedural season finale, and it's not. I don't know. Maybe they'll do a new one. Maybe they'll do a like just how they did a Nash Bridges movie with Cheech Marin and Don Johnson. Maybe they'll get those guys together again. I don't know.
Yeah, and then they can die in the pilot, and their daughters can be the fucking main characters.
Yeah. That is literally what would happen, though. That's not
of course. Yeah.
That should not be seen as a joke. That's how that would go. Although, is that better or worse than Vin Diesel doing that for NBC? Because that was the original plan like 6 years ago.
What was Vin Diesel going to do?
He was going to reboot Miami Vice, and it was going to be an NBC procedural.
Oh, no.
Like they did with Hawaii Five-0 and
Lethal
Knight
Weapon.
Rider and
It was right during that time where they did Lethal Weapon, and that lasted 3 seasons until Damon Wayans was like, nope, piece of shrapnel hit my ear. We have to fire the other guy, Clayton Clane, I think his name was, the guy who was playing the Mel Gibson role. He got him fired over that. And they also tried to do a Rush Hour TV series for CBS around the same exact time, and that did not take like the Lethal Weapon show did.
It's just preposterous. Like who greenlit that?
I don't know. They were trying to do that. They were looking at all these old properties to see if they could turn it into cop procedurals. Because I know they did the Beverly Hills Cop pilot, and that got canceled because people wanted more Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy agreed to do the first episode, and whenever they do these test viewings for audiences, they say click a button when you're especially glued to the episode. And they would always hit that button when Eddie Murphy was on screen, not so much with the lead guy. And CBS said to Eddie Murphy, we'll give you $50 million if you join the cast as like a regular. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because Eddie Murphy's got enough money, I guess, from the clubs.
Well,
Wasn't it?
I've said this a million times about shit like that. It's like they keep doing these remakes that are for no one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, because the people who love the original thing, they don't want it remade. And the people who don't love the original thing don't give a shit. They want something new. So just do something new or don't do anything.
Yeah, they won't do that. They'll just keep making Beverly Hills Cop.
No, I know. No, you're absolutely right.
Wasn't there a Knight Rider one? I thought there's a new Walker Texas Ranger. That's also
I didn't hear about
a thing
that.
for whatever
They're
reason.
keeping
starring
that
the
low
guy
key
from-
because they cast a white guy as Walker. That's why you don't hear about that. Is
Oh,
they
they did? They
Yeah,
didn't
they
cast
younger
Rebel
brother.
Wilson.
no.
It's the younger
it's-
brother for Supernatural. Is it?
Yeah, Jared Padalecki is the star of that show.
Yeah, that's Walker. So it's great.
It could be worse. Listen, it could be much worse.
Could be Rebel Wilson.
Yeah.
Just-
All right. I think that that is going to be the show for this evening. Wolfman, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at DET_Wolfman and nowhere else for now.
All right. And it has been a pleasure having you on for a solo episode. I don't think our mashup, our 3-show mashup, really counts as far as that goes. So it was good to get you on and talk about the Keep, and we'll have to have you back real soon for another episode if you're down.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Awesome. All right. That has been Movies for this week. Thank you for listening.